Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hi, this is Tammy Patzer, and I'm really excited to introduce you to today's guest, Shaun Cooke. Shaun is a former classroom educator, writer, and editor with degrees in journalism, education, and historic preservation. She has 10 plus years of experience teaching reading, composition, literature, and history. Shaun's personal passion is to open up the world for students of all ages by filling their cognitive baskets through improved reading comprehension skills. Shaun is also a very accomplished ghostwriter and copy editor, helping first-time and established writers get their stories told, polished for publication, and, of course, she helps get them out into the world. Welcome, Shaun.
Thank you, Tammy.
I'm really excited because you have this, I would call it a juicy, delicious background. And the reason I say that is because there are many people who, when they go to school, they don't ever mix their passions up. And I think you have, because journalism, education, and historical preservation. So I can imagine in my mind how you could mash those together and have this really phenomenal background. And then what I really admire about you is your passion for reading and for communication, because it is like the foundation, the bedrock of all education. So tell me a little bit more about who you help.
Okay. So my perfect prospect, my perfect client is the parent of a school-age child, and that child is performing poorly in school. Now, it can just be in the area of language arts, reading and writing, but it could also just be all across the subject areas. Because, of course, if that comprehension piece is missing, then you have a child who's struggling all across the board. Also, I'm looking for a client who's really hands-on when it comes to their child's education. They know, what's really going on. The main type of child that I work with is what I call a word caller. They're the kind of child who can read anything that you put in front of them, but don't ask them anything about it, because they really can't tell you. They can call a word out, they can pronounce it, but that comprehension piece is missing. So I'm looking for parents who are kind of like, you know what, my kid's got a great teacher, but I know that this teacher is really tied up by all these constraints that are put on them as far as teaching to the test, et cetera, and really doesn't have the time or resources to individualize intensive support for my kid. And so that's who I help.
So that's really interesting, because I know that you kind of like glossed over it in a very nice way, but the teaching to the test, that's one of my personal pet peeves, because if you look at education, and I actually was a substitute teacher for a while, and of course I've had children in the recent school system, and it is just absolutely terrifying to me that our children are going to school and they spend so much time worrying about a test and not spending time on the foundations or the basics and, of reading and writing and comprehension and that whole ball of wax. So that is really, really interesting to me. So when you're trying to help the parents, what are some of the problems that you are solving for these people?
Well, what I find most often is that, the first thing that happens when the parents figure out that their kid's struggling academically is the first impulse is to either run, to a brick and mortar tutoring center or to hire somebody that they pay by the hour. But the basic tutoring that the centers and, your neighborhood tutor offers, they don't necessarily deal with homework, that's key to the child's grade. And they don't really zero in on the struggles that doing homework away from the classroom and away from that extra support of a teacher can bring to a family, and to the child when a parent is home and trying to get dinner ready, and all those things that happen once you want to get home and your child is struggling with homework. Now, those tutoring centers, they're going to work just on a skill. But parents are like, what do we do, when I'm at home and it takes 2 hours for us to get this done because my child really doesn't have what you talked about, that foundation, doesn't have those basics. So what I offer, it's not based on worksheets. It's not based on something pulled out of a workbook. It's individual academic support that's really intensive, and it's going to surpass what's offered, by basic tutoring. So that's one of the big problems.
It's so funny because I just had a flashback. I actually took I had 2 sons who needed help, and I used to take them to the study center, I don't know how many times a week, and it was so stressful because I think I had to get home from work, grab the kid, take them back another 20 miles back the other direction, and then I don't remember if it was both of them or just one, but, put them into this study center. And you're absolutely right. It was extremely stressful. And to tell you the truth, I don't know. I can't remember, what the results were anymore. But all I remember is that it was very time-consuming and stressful on my part. So imagine what it must have been like for my children who, because mom was all stressed out trying to get them to the tutor, and, and I'm not even sure if my children understood what issues they were facing at the time. So what makes your program unique compared to others?
Well, everything that I offer is conducted online. It's through either phone conferencing, or my preference is to do it like during video chat. So just like you said, parents are super busy and kids are involved in after-school activities. So this is one less thing that a parent has on their plate if they take my program. Your kid can complete my program, on a tablet in the back seat of the car. They can, do it in the minivan. They can do it on summer vacation or, family vacation. Or you can just go home. You get your kids, you come home, you sit your child down in front of the laptop, or your desktop computer. And as a parent, you can go off and decompress and do the things that you need to do. Parents are not required to interact in this program. I conduct everything for the child right there online. We're either going to work one-on-one intensively, or we're going to work in a small group. And like I said, it's not based on worksheets or anything pulled out of a workbook. Parents get weekly progress reports from me. They have access to me via email. So it's not, as if they just wait until the end and say, sorry, Johnny still can't read. This constant, interaction. So one less place they've got to throw the kids in a car and hurry and run off to. And that's an hour gained, to be able to get a home-cooked meal rather than having to grab some fast food, to get home. Time to open the mail. Heck, time to, sit down and talk to your spouse while you know that your child is safe and comfortable and much less stressed out, sitting at home, getting their work done. And one of the weekly sessions actually focuses on any homework, that the child has during the week that they're finding particularly difficult.
So you're actually working on their actual homework that they have, and you say that you're not using worksheets or cookie cutter workbooks. What do you use, and how do you make it so that think about it. You're by the time your kid's been at school all day long, they're tired, and if they've done things, what is it that you can do that makes it like, wow, I can't wait to talk to Shaun today or to do my work? What is it that you do that makes it so the child is engaged and wants to do this?
Right. Well, one thing that makes my program different is that my programs are based on real text. They're based on real books, either going to be like a short novel or, a full-size novel. So my experience as an educator, I mean, I'm crazy just about reading, absolutely crazy about reading and literature. So my experience as a teacher, from primary grades all the way up through, I taught the university level, I've been exposed and have been involved in exposing my kids to all kinds of children's literature. So I feel like I have an ability to kind of get to know a kid up front and find out what it is that they're interested in. And so my program, I have some ready-made programs that are based on children's novels that I know are popular, things that interest boys, things that interest girls, all kinds of stuff. So these are books that will pique and hold the kids' interest. So the programs are based on those real books, and I approach it from a literature study approach, which is done in the classroom with a small group of kids. You have a book that the kids choose, and it's sort of like you read part of it together, they read part of it on their own, and it really breaks the story down in ways that boost comprehension. It singles out vocabulary, skills such as inference and prediction, but all sort of from the children driving what interests them. They pull out what they read that they thought was interesting, or maybe they didn't quite understand it, or what does this word mean, or I think this is cool and I want to share it. And so they're kind of like chomping at the bit because they want to be the first one to say, this is what I found, this is what I found. Everybody, listen to me. So it sort of takes that pressure off them that's in the classroom when they really aren't sure what they understand and sure if they're going to be right. They've got a book in front of them that they want to read, and it sort of flips the whole thing around.
That's really cool because I used to get my son the books on tape, the unabridged, and then I would give him the book, and he used to learn how to read that way because I wasn't getting any really good help from the school system, and that was what my instinct said to do. And I think a lot of it came from back when I was a kid, when we used to go out and do recess after lunch, and then we'd come back in and we would have the quiet time, and the teacher used to read to us and we would listen, and of course the teacher would read to us, and then there were other opportunities in class. And this used to happen even not in a reading class, but I remember standing up in history class reading paragraphs out of the history book to the rest of the class, and we all took turns. So nobody was singled out for whatever, and it was just a whole different comprehensive learning environment. So that sounds really cool. So you have some books that you might help them choose, but then if they have books that they have to read for school, you actually help them read those books too?
Yes. Yep. So that way I can help kids all the way from elementary school all the way up through high school. They can also come to me and say, we've got a book, we're having trouble with this. I can build a whole program around that book.
So when would somebody come to you? When do you normally start working with children?
I mean, it can happen as soon as, usually like second, third grade, when you really get to the point where you can identify that a child is struggling with comprehension, even though that they can call words. So working with kids as small as that, of course, the sooner that you identify it, the better. But, I always say, you get parents of older elementary school students, 4th and 5th grade, and at this point they're pulling their hair out, and it's sort of like, okay, here you are, you're at the end of the school year and your kid has struggled all year long. Now I can work with your child during the summer, and we can try and turn things around, and you can see results during the first marking period. And now here we are where the first marking period is over. So that first report card has come in, and, this week parents are going to parent-teacher conferences, and it's kind of like, what are you going to do? Are you going to keep dealing with this, or are you going to try something different? The sooner you can get your child that help, the better off the better off things can be, the sooner we can turn things around.
So if somebody starts with you, would you say it's a long-term relationship or just a relationship that as needed for as long as they need to get to a certain point? How does that work?
I would say as needed. You have some kids who, when we find that sweet spot, that whatever it is that's really holding them back, working with me. Now, normally the programs last an entire school term, an entire marking period. So working with me for that one marking period might really just do the trick. And we found that sweet spot. Now, there may be other kids who, they come in and they go out and then they might come back in again, especially if they get hit with, sort of higher level reading, higher level novels and things that are required for school. They may come back and say, you know what, maybe not the intensive one-on-one, but maybe sort of the group, the small group program. I think I might benefit a little bit from this, or even something where I can build a small program around a particular book. And I just sort of film, I videotape, all the lessons and everything that needs to be broken down. And a parent can just buy that. They can buy that and sit down and just sort of, the child can run through the program, sort of on their own or like with the parent as facilitator rather than having to do the intensive with me.
So you have a one-on-one intensive, a group program, and video?
Yeah, it's sort of like a make and take, and because I know that there are some people who really, really need this, but they may not absolutely be able to afford the one-on-one intensive program. But, they still just really desperately want to help their child. So that's one of the options that I have is that, it's not as detailed or as lengthy as the one-on-one intensive, but we can build a program around a book, and I just, sit down, and it's sort of like the recordings are for the parent. I sort of sit down, and it just goes through everything that you need to do. This is lesson 1, this is lesson 2, this is what we do this week, this is what we do in the 4th week, whatever. And the parent just sort of buys that package, but then they're sitting, facilitating with the student rather than that student being with me intensive three times a week.
That's really interesting. So your programs are your language programs based on phonics or whole word? I can't even talk now. Whole word. What is your program based on so that people can kind of visualize how it might work?
Yeah, absolutely. Because one thing that people hear, reading, and they automatically think that it's phonics based, and this is not a phonics based program. This is not about teaching kids the sort of ABCs of putting words together. This is really a program that's based on building comprehension skills so that kids can get what they're reading and then apply those skills all across the subject areas. So this is whole language, whole text. This is for kids who can read anything that you put in front of them, but they're missing that piece where they need to take their time and really understand what it is that they're reading so that they need to build their vocabulary skills. They need to build, skills for prediction, how to infer what's going on in the story, based on what they're reading. That sort of thing. So it's not phonics-based. I really don't want people to get confused with that because this is not about teaching children how to pronounce words.
Right. Well, it's interesting, all of the things you just described, because I actually used to teach what was called 0020 English at the college. And what 0010 and 0020 English is, it's for people who graduate from high school, but their skills are not high enough to be in the English 101 class where you have to write essays. So a lot of time is spent on grammar and spelling and comprehension and all of those things related to predicting, just like what you said, because it is really a kind of I believe, a sad fact that many people do graduate from high school now, and they really cannot read and write in a way that, I guess, a functioning level way, beyond, maybe they can, write their name and things like that, but they can't write a paragraph.
Right. It's unreal. I too, I taught at the university level, and I taught a class in addition to comprehension 101 and 102, I taught what was called basic writing skills.
Mm-hmm. That would have been the 0, 0, 10, and 20.
Mm-hmm. It was the same thing. And when I first started, I was just blown away that these young people were basically passed through high school and lacking these fundamentals. I mean, not understanding the correct way to use punctuation. And, how to sentence structure and essay structure. And it really was sad. It was really, really sad. And I thought, you know what, there's an incredible need for this, because this can be caught so much earlier.
Exactly. And that's where you come in, because you get it. Well, it's really important because, like I said, I can really resonate with everything you're saying, because number one, I had a daughter who was like just super brain, and she didn't have any issues. But then my two sons both were a little bit slower to learn, and they were put into ESE classes, and that was like, that's a whole nother story. But it wasn't that they were stupid. It was they just needed more time. And my one son had a slight speech impediment, so he actually got a lot of extra phonics and reading and things that really helped him a lot later. And like I said, I actually used to get the unabridged books on tape and the book, and then he would listen to the books on tape and read along with it and go from there. So there is a need, and like I said, I taught adults who needed these basic skills, and I keep thinking that if parents, if they have the option of working with someone, especially in the online world, where you don't have to chase all over and add another hour to your life by trying to help your children, because every parent wants to help their children learn. I mean, you don't go out into the world and say, oh, no, I want my kids to be really stupid and not know how to read and write. I mean, what parent has that as a goal? None. Right. So I really think that's really important. So what do you think of, if I were going to try to figure out how to help my child, I can pay, I guess, a face-to-face tutor, which I did. At one point, I could take my child to a center, which I did, or I could work with you in an online environment, either in a one-to-one, a group, or I could have you make me this video program. So how would I go about making these choices, and what should I be asking about these programs when I'm trying to evaluate what is right for my child? What questions should I be asking the tutor, the center, you?
Well, the first thing is, it really is, a partnership. Like I said, these are parents who are really, I'm looking for parents who are really hands-on in terms of being involved in their child's education. So you've got an idea from the child's teacher, because we do have some awesome teachers. I was one of them. You have some awesome teachers out there who are really teaching with their hands tied behind their backs because of all the nonsense that goes on in our education system. So you've got teachers who, they're going to tell you exactly what it is. This is what I feel is missing. And so based upon that and what you see from, your own child's performance, you sort of get a gauge as to how intensive how much help do you think they really need? Do you think they just need to find that sweet spot? If that's the case, then perhaps just working in a small group. Is this something that sort of affects them only when it comes to their reading and writing, or are they having problems all across the subject areas? Because, there is reading in math now. Of course there's reading in science, and of course there's reading in history. So if that's what you're seeing, then your child probably needs some much more intensive work than you can get at, just a regular center like a Kumon or a Sylvan, or working with, the local tutor who, you meet at the library for an hour, or two a week. So it really is based on how much struggle is your child going through? How stressful is it, when they're sitting down and doing homework, when they're trying to read? What is it exactly that the teacher is telling you? And is that report card showing struggling grades all across the board? Those are some questions that you really need to ask. Of course, I can help with all, with the entire gamut. But one thing is, people think of, they think about it, and so they look at the programs, and, they may see the price and think, whew, that's pretty hefty. But one thing to keep in mind is it's an entire, school marking period that you're working with. And based upon the program that you choose, your kid is spending time with me 2 to 3 times during the week. And you've got, access, and we've got communication going back and forth, and it pretty much is a tailor-made program, tailored to your child. So if you think, that this is going to be really expensive, think about how expensive it's going to be down the road for your child if they continue to struggle. It needs to be looked at as an investment.
Think about it. If you don't have good reading, writing, and comprehension skills, what kind of job are you going to be able to get? If you go to college and you have to do the 0010 or 0020, i.e. non-credit courses, the cost of tuition, you pay the same tuition for the non-credit courses, you just don't get credit for them.
Absolutely.
And you add, so that's going to add a year to your college costs. And believe me, college is not cheap. You are also going to miss out on scholarships, because if your grades suck, meaning if you're not getting A's in the world today, and you're competing for money, to go to school, guess what? You're the money that you don't spend on your child's education, when you're still able to help them and control that education process, you are literally saying to your kid, you're not worth it. And I know that sounds really mean, but if you're able to, invest in your child's education, then, and they need the help, then it's kind of like your job as a parent to at least look into something like this, because it is about their future. I mean, it's really sad when you think about it, because we know that people who don't have good reading skills, writing skills, math skills, science skills, they're the ones that are trying to work at McDonald's, and they're in their 30s. And everybody always talks about the burger flipper thing, and that they shouldn't make $15 an hour. That's a whole nother scenario. But the reality is the education that where people really need it is in the foundation years. It isn't about the college. I'm going to go to college, because if you don't have the skills, you're not going to go to college. You wouldn't even see college as an option for you if it was a struggle for you. And I know for a fact that one person like you, Shaun, can make a huge difference. I had a tutor who helped my son learn basic math that he had not learned in elementary school. And he worked with my son for, it wasn't very long, maybe a couple months. But what he did is he laid the foundation of math for my son so that he could do all of his multiplication table, all the basics.
Yes.
And then guess what? My son took math classes, A, took algebra, A, took advanced algebra, took geometry, took higher level math as electives because he knew that he understood it. And that was because of someone like you who made it understandable. And I think like what you were talking about, when you actually teach from the place of, well, let's do something that you're interested in, let's help you do your homework. Let's not add to the plate, but let's, make that load lighter on the child and the parent. I think that's really a phenomenal thing. Tell me, how can people find out more about you and your services?
Oh, sure. Well, my Facebook page is Shaun Cooke, and my website is actually Shaun Coleman-Cook, and that's Cook with an E. So it's ShaunColeman-Cook.com.
Okay.
And like I said, my Facebook page is Shaun Cooke, so you can inbox me, and I can give you my email address. That is Shaun, and I know there's several different ways to spell Shaun, so it's SHAUN .Cooke, COOKE 19 at yahoo.com.
Okay, so Shaun, SHAUN .COOKE 19 at yahoo.
Yes.
.com. Okay, that's the email address. Well, Shaun, is there anything else that we may have missed in our conversation that you'd like to add?
Well, I want to say thank you to you because this is a fabulous opportunity. Thank you so much for this. I love to be able to share what it is that I do and how different it is. And the last thing that I want to say is, really for parents to understand that this is like an intervention, for your kid as well as an investment, because you're either going to pay now or your kid's going to pay later, So that's basically it. And I absolutely love what I do. Thank you for letting me share it.
Well, great. I really enjoyed learning about your program, and think about it, everybody. If you can get back an hour a day and your child can work with Shaun, learn how to read and how to comprehend, and they can go from F's to A's, oh my God, how cool would that be? So thanks a lot, Shaun. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Tammy.
This is Tammy Patzer. Go make it a beautiful day.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.